Hello everybody, welcome back. It's been a long time. I've not uploaded a YouTube video for about around 5-6 months after I said I would start. Look, the reason for that, I had a change of jobs, a laptop broke, I've got a completely new setup, I've got a new Mac Mini, which I'll probably do a video on at some point just to show you my thoughts on it, what I like about it, what I dislike about it. But what I thought I would talk about today are some of the top three things that I wish I had done sooner in my technology career, and probably some things that I regret not doing. Um, but I just wish I'd done sooner because it would have made life a lot easier, and also advanced my career faster. And I don't want anyone else starting out in technology or young people who need some sort of direction to make these same mistakes that I did. Now, some of you may have seen my TikTok video on this. I did it the other day. Go follow that below if you haven't. But I thought I would make a YouTube video on it and just elaborate on these points a little bit more because you don't get that long to talk about things on TikTok. Now, the first one was learning to script in multiple languages. Now, obviously, when I first started out working in IT support, the only scripting tool I ever used was PowerShell. Now, the reason for that was because every company I worked for used Windows environment. When I did my apprenticeship, I did a little bit of HTML, but that isn't really a scripting tool. Some people wouldn't even classify that as a language because anyone can learn HTML probably in a week or so. Now, PowerShell is obviously valuable, and it's always going to help you in Windows. If you're working for a Windows company, you're going to be using it a lot to script certain jobs, schedule tasks, make your job faster, really. There's a lot of things you can automate with PowerShell on Windows. But the problem is, I did not think about the trajectory of where my career was going, where technology was shifting. And as we all know, I'm now currently a cloud engineer, working on AWS, doing a lot of stuff on Linux. Which you don't use PowerShell on. Linux native scripting tool is Bash, and you can also use Python. Which leads me on to my first point, that broadening my horizons, learning Bash, learning Python, would have made things a lot easier for myself in the future. Now, if you've already got the fundamental skills from PowerShell, you know what a variable is, you know what a function is, you know how to logically write your scripts, moving on to Bash, moving on to PowerShell is going to be fine. Now, PowerShell, personally, I think it's quite hard to read. Most people will tell you it isn't because they're like PowerShell gurus and they say, oh, it's fine, there's only like 5 commands. You just need to know everything else after that. It's a little bit hard to read. Bash, when you read Bash, it's a lot more user-friendly. As we all know, Python is pretty user-friendly as well. And if you're working on AWS, largely, you're only really going to be using the bot03 import. The other one I've used is the CSV import for when I need to take data out of the AWS cloud and convert it into a spreadsheet, which is quite handy because the AWS CLI doesn't let you output to a CSV file. I think it only lets you output to text, YAML, JSON, and a couple others. Now, I guess that can kind of lead you on to my next point. Is not learning Linux. I didn't do anything on Linux until my 9th year in technology. You have to remember, I was working my way up through the ranks of support, went into infrastructure, went into cloud. Before that, it was all Windows. I know nothing about Linux, and actually my first project when I became a cloud engineer was setting up a solution for an account on Linux, and I spent so much time Googling commands that it made it the project was just getting delayed. And when you get to the position of cloud engineer, you're in the higher salaries, you're expected to come into a company and know what to do. You aren't really trained or taught. You're just said, here's the solution, go build that for me, go use AWS, go use Terraform, I want it built on Linux, these are the security groups, this is the DNS I need set up, this is the network range. You're not told, no one's going to sit there training you like, this is how you create a user, this is how you create a key pair for SSH, this is how you create a new file on Linux, this is how you read a file, this is what Vim is. You're getting paid good money, you're an engineer, you need to know this, which I did learn. It took a few weeks before I started remembering all the commands that I would use daily, but after a little while, a lot of Googling, personal research, I got there in the end. Now, there is still commands to this day that obviously I'm not going to know. Linux has multiple distributions. You've got CentOS, Ubuntu, Red Hat. You know, there was one the other day when I've set up a project on Ansible for a client, and it wasn't working in production. I was kind of, why is this not working? I had to add the user I created for Ansible to a sudo.d file, which is kind of like an admin file where you say this user has allowed sudo rights. You know, that was something else that popped up that I hadn't done before. So constantly learning Linux over the past 6 months. I'm not going to say I'm a Linux god or a Linux guru. I would say I'm competent enough to know how to use Linux on the command line, maneuver my way around. It takes a lot because you have no GUI. So when you go from Windows to just doing everything command line on Linux, it's a bit overwhelming, remembering all the commands. But you know, riding a bike for the first time is overwhelming at the end of the day. But what we need to remember is that Linux is essential if you want to be a cloud engineer, DevOps engineer, site reliability engineer. You know, even software engineers know some form of Linux. You know, and also it gets you used to using the command line and other tools like Docker or Kubernetes, for example, because most of the time this container technology is running on Linux. Now, the third thing that I wish I had done sooner and that I regret isn't necessarily a technical aspect. I wish I never stayed loyal to companies for too long. Now, I'm 26, started working in technology when I was 17, so that's 9 years. September will be my 10th year, and I stayed at one company for 5 years. Now, when you are young, I do recommend people to stay at companies for a little while to build up experience, try get internal promotions, and then leave to another company to get a bumper pay rise. Because if you leave a company, go to another company, you're always going to get a bigger pay rise than you would internally where you are. You know, you may get 1-2% where you are every year and a little bonus. If you leave, you can get 10, 20, 30% increase, like I have done. I job hopped twice. And I job hopped 2 times and tripled my salary when you include all the bonuses. Now, if I did not job hop over those 2 years, I'd have probably been on the same salary or a little bit more as now if I never job hopped. And what happened really is I'm now 26 years old. I've worked across 5 different industries in multiple different job roles in the engineering field, support, infrastructure. Now I'm cloud engineer. I've done cloud support as well. So when you have your CV and you say, I'm a multi-cloud engineer who works on Azure, AWS, I've worked across 5 different industries, that holds a lot of weight, and companies look at that and they think, wow, like that's very good experience for someone young to have. So, you know, I've got 2 years and around 4 months in hospitality. I've got 5 years in finance. I've got 1 year in consulting in healthcare, and now I'm currently working in defense for past 6 months. The other thing to really consider as well is that when you're in your 20s, you don't know what you're going to be doing in your 30s. Now, providing you stay in the same job role, not job role, like job sector, if you've worked across multiple industries, in your 30s you may realise, okay, well, I actually prefer working in defence, or I prefer working in consulting, or I prefer working for a tech company. What one suits you best, provides the best flexibility, provides the best salary, and when you're in your 30s, remember, you start looking at like what provides the best pension, because over the next 30 years, you're going to want to build up a very good pension. You know what one is going to be best for you because you've tried them all out. And if you're working in the private sector, we all know pensions are nowhere near as good as the public sector, but the salaries are a lot better, so it kind of weighs it out. Now, from my experiences, the finance industries and the banks provide the best pensions. So someone like myself, I did like working in that industry, but the salaries were lower compared to, you know, consulting, tech, defense, but the pension was higher. But if I went for a job now in the finance industry, again, working in a technology department, I'm going to be on a much higher salary because of my experiences. I'll be going for a more senior job role, and I'll have a good pension. So all these things you really need to consider for your career and the future. And there you have it. That are the top 3 things I wish I had done sooner, the top 3 things that I regret. I don't really know how to title this video because I've been using both of those sort of phrases throughout. I did the same on TikTok as well. I said sooner and then I titled it regrets. Learning a script in multiple languages, learning Linux, and not staying loyal to companies for too long more than I need to. Take the lessons I have learned today, apply them to yourself, see if it benefits you, see what you think. But for now, that is the end of the video. Thank you all for watching if you got this far. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. It does help me out. Peace.